Have you ever stopped for a moment and asked yourself a simple but uncomfortable question? What are you really doing with your time while the clock keeps moving forward without asking for your permission? Because every day you wake up, you breathe, you move. But are you actually getting closer to the life you say you want? Or are you just repeating the same habits again and again while your dreams stay quiet in the background, waiting for a version of you that takes responsibility? And that is exactly why I want you here with me today. Welcome to the channel, English to Inspire, a place where you don't just learn English, but also learn how to look at your life with honesty and courage. And if you feel that something inside you needs to change, then subscribe and stay with me, because this story might hit deeper than you expect. And today we are going to talk about a man named Bill Gates. A man who did not just become successful, but changed the way the world works. And maybe you think this story is about money or intelligence or luck, but it is not. It is about decisions. It is about focus. And it is about what you choose to do when nobody is watching you. Because while most people were relaxing, playing, and delaying their future, this young boy was already making choices that would separate him from the crowd. And now I want to ask you something very direct. Are you using your time like it matters, or are you spending it like you have unlimited chances? Because the truth is simple and hard at the same time. You don't have unlimited chances. You have today. You have now. And what you do with this moment is shaping everything that will come next. And when you hear the name Bill Gates, you probably think about a billionaire, about success, about power. But what you don't see is the long road, the quiet nights, the sacrifices, and the moments of doubt that built that name step by step. And that is why this story is not about him. It is about you. Because if one person can change his life completely by focusing, learning, and acting with intention, then what is your excuse? What is stopping you right now? Is it fear? Is it comfort? Or is it the habit of waiting for the perfect moment that never arrives? Because let me be very honest with you. The perfect moment is a lie. It does not exist. And the people who achieve something meaningful understand this very early. They start before they feel ready. They move before they feel confident. And they learn while they are doing the work, not before. And as we go deeper into this story, you will start to see a pattern, a way of thinking, a way of acting that you can also use in your own life, but only if you are willing to listen, to reflect, and most important, to act. Because information without action is just noise, and motivation without discipline disappears very fast. So stay with me, stay focused, because the story of a curious boy growing up in a world that was about to change is just beginning. And what happened in his early years will explain everything that came next. When you look at success from the outside, it often seems like something distant, something reserved for special people with special lives. But the truth is much more uncomfortable, because success usually starts in very simple moments, small decisions and quiet habits that nobody celebrates. And the story of Bill Gates begins in a place that, at first, does not look dramatic at all. He was born into a family that had structure, education, and opportunities. And you might think that this made everything easy for him. But let me challenge that idea, because having access is not the same as using access. And many people around the world have chances, resources, and time, but they still do nothing meaningful with it. So the real question is not what you have, but what you do with what you have. And as a young boy, Bill was different in one very important way. He was curious, deeply curious, the kind of curiosity that does not accept simple answers and does not stop after a few minutes. He wanted to understand how things worked, why things worked, and what could be improved. And this mindset is powerful, because curiosity is the beginning of growth. It is the fire that pushes you to learn even when it is hard, even when nobody is forcing you. And while other kids were focused only on entertainment, he was already spending long hours reading, thinking, and exploring ideas. And here is something you need to hear very clearly. Talent is not enough. Intelligence is not enough. What really creates change is the habit of going deeper, again and again. Even when it feels boring, even when it feels difficult, And this is where most people fail. They want results, but they do not want the process. They want success, but they avoid the repetition, the practice, and the discipline that success requires. So let me ask you something directly. When you have free time, what do you do with it? Do you invest it in learning, in building, in improving yourself? Or do you escape into comfort, distractions, and easy entertainment? Because your answer to this question is quietly building your future, day after day. And Bill Gates understood something very early. Even if he did not say it in words, he understood that time is not something to spend. It is something to use, something to direct with intention. And that is why his curiosity was not passive. It was active. He did not just wonder. He acted. He explored. He tested. He failed. And then he tried again. And this behavior may look simple, but it creates a huge difference over time. Because small actions, repeated consistently, become powerful results. And as the world around him was slowly moving toward a new era of technology, something happened that would change everything for him. A moment that would take his curiosity and turn it into obsession. And that moment is where the real transformation begins. There are moments in life that look small when they happen, but later you realize that everything changed because of that one moment. And for Bill Gates, that moment arrived when he was still very young, when he first had access to a computer. And today, computers are everywhere, in your pocket, in your home, in your daily routine. But at that time, computers were rare, expensive, and almost mysterious. And most people did not understand their true potential. But Bill saw something different. He did not just see a machine. He saw a world of possibilities. A tool that could create, solve, and transform ideas into reality. And that is where curiosity turned into obsession. Because once he touched that world, he did not want to leave it. He started spending hours and hours learning how to program, writing code, making mistakes, fixing errors, and trying again, and again, and again. While other people were living normal routines, he was going deeper into something that most people ignored. And this is where I want you to pay attention. Because this is not just about computers. This is about focus. Real focus. The kind of focus that makes you forget time. That makes you say no to distractions. That makes you choose growth over comfort. And let me ask you something very direct. When was the last time you focused on something so deeply that you lost track of time? Or are you always divided, always distracted, always jumping from one thing to another without going deep into anything? Because that behavior is dangerous. It keeps you busy but not productive. It gives you movement but not progress. And Bill Gates was different because he was willing to stay with the problem, to stay with the challenge, even when it was frustrating, even when it was difficult. And that is exactly where most people stop. They feel discomfort, and they quit. They feel confusion, and they escape. But growth lives inside discomfort. Progress lives inside repetition, and mastery lives inside patience. And as Bill continued to spend more time with computers, his skills started to grow very fast, faster than most people around him. And this is another lesson you need to understand. When you give your time and energy to something consistently, you separate yourself from the average. Not in one day, not in 1 week, but over months and years. And this separation creates opportunities. Doors begin to open, people begin to notice, and suddenly you are in a position that others cannot reach. Not because you are special, but because you were consistent. And this obsession with learning and building would soon push Bill Gates to make one of the most difficult decisions of his life. A decision that most people would be too afraid to take. But he did not wait for safety. He moved with vision. And that is where the next part of his journey begins. At some point in life, you will face a decision that feels bigger than you. A decision that forces you to choose between safety and growth, between what is expected and what is possible. And most people already know what they will choose. They will choose safety. They will choose the path that looks stable, predictable, and accepted by everyone around them. But the story of Bill Gates takes a different direction at exactly this moment. Because after entering Harvard University, one of the most respected universities in the world. He was already on a path that many people would consider a guaranteed success, a strong education, a clear future, and social approval. But inside him, something was stronger than that comfort. Something was pulling him in another direction, and that something was his vision, his growing belief that the future of computers was not just an idea, but a reality that was coming fast. And he wanted to be part of building that future, not just watching it happen. And now I want you to stop and think for a moment. How many times have you felt that internal voice telling you to try something different, to take a risk, to move in a direction that scares you, but you ignored it because it felt uncertain, because it felt uncomfortable, because it did not have guarantees? And this is where most people stay stuck. They wait for certainty. They wait for approval. They wait for the perfect plan. But that moment never arrives. And Bill Gates understood something that many people learn too late. If you wait until you feel ready, you will never start. So he made a decision that shocked many people. He left Harvard. He walked away from that safe path. Not because he was careless, but because he was committed. Committed to his vision. Committed to his belief that he could build something meaningful. And let me be very clear with you. This was not easy. This was not comfortable. This was not guaranteed. He was stepping into uncertainty, into risk, into a future that could fail completely. And that is why this moment matters so much, because it shows the difference between people who dream and people who act. Dreamers talk, planners wait, but builders move, even when they are afraid, even when the outcome is unclear. And now I ask you again, what are you waiting for? What decision are you avoiding right now because it feels risky? Because it feels uncertain? Because it might not work? Because the truth is simple. Every big change in life starts with a decision that feels uncomfortable. And if you continue to choose comfort over growth, your life will stay exactly where it is. And maybe that is not what you want to hear, but it is what you need to hear. Because nothing changes if you do not change. And as Bill Gates stepped away from the traditional path and moved toward building something from nothing, he was about to enter a phase of his life that would demand everything from him. His time, his energy, his focus, and his discipline. And that is where the real work begins. When people look at success, they often imagine a moment, a big event, a breakthrough that changes everything in one day. But the truth is much less exciting and much more demanding, because real success is built slowly, in long days, in difficult nights, in moments where nobody is watching and nobody is clapping. And this is exactly the phase where Bill Gates found himself after leaving Harvard University, because now there was no safety, no clear structure, no guaranteed outcome. There was only a vision and the responsibility to make that vision real. And together with his partner, he started building what would become Microsoft. But at that time, it was not a giant company. It was just an idea, a small operation, and a lot of uncertainty. And this is where many people give up. Because the beginning is always hard. The beginning is always slow. The beginning does not give you immediate rewards. And if you are addicted to fast results, you will quit before anything meaningful has time to grow. And Bill Gates did something that most people are not willing to do. He committed fully. He worked long hours, sometimes with very little rest, focusing deeply on writing code, improving products, and understanding the needs of a market that was still being created. And here is something important you need to understand. Discipline is not about feeling motivated. Discipline is about doing the work, even when you do not feel like it, even when you are tired, even when progress seems invisible. And this is where the separation happens. Because while most people stop when things get difficult, a few continue, and those few build the future. And let me ask you something very honestly. How do you react when things get hard? Do you push forward, or do you step back? Do you stay consistent, or do you disappear? Because your answer to this question is shaping your results right now. Not in the future, right now. And as Microsoft started to grow, small wins began to appear. Small signs that the work was moving in the right direction. But even then, nothing was guaranteed. Competition was coming, pressure was increasing, and the demand for excellence was constant. And this is another truth you need to accept. When you start to grow, the game becomes harder, not easier. Expectations increase, challenges become more complex, and the level of responsibility rises. And if you are not prepared mentally, if you are not strong in your habits, you will collapse under that pressure. But Bill Gates was not looking for comfort. He was building capacity. He was training himself to handle more, to think faster, to act smarter, and to stay focused while everything around him was changing quickly. And this intense period of building, learning, and adapting would soon place him in a world where competition was not just real. It was aggressive, and only those who could stay sharp, disciplined, and relentless would survive. And that is where the next challenge begins. As you move forward in any meaningful path, you will eventually enter a space where things are no longer simple, no longer calm, and no longer under your full control. And this is exactly what happened when Bill Gates and Microsoft started to grow faster and gain attention. Because growth brings pressure, and pressure reveals who you really are, not who you pretend to be when things are easy. And suddenly, the world around him became more competitive, more demanding, and less forgiving. Other companies were entering the market, strong players with resources, experience, and their own ambitions. And this is where many people lose their direction. They become distracted. They try to do everything at the same time. They react instead of thinking, and they slowly lose control of their own vision. But Bill Gates chose a different approach. He became even more focused, even more strategic, and sometimes even ruthless in protecting what he was building. And I want you to understand this clearly. Focus is not just about working hard. Focus is about saying no. No to distractions. No to opportunities that do not align with your goal. No to people and habits that pull you away from your mission. And this is difficult, because saying no creates discomfort. It creates doubt, and sometimes it creates conflict. But without that discipline, you will be pulled in every direction, and you will not go deep in anything. And Bill Gates was known for his intense focus, for his ability to concentrate on problems for long periods of time, to analyze, to think, and to act with precision. And while others were spreading their energy across many things, he was directing his energy into what mattered most. And that created an advantage, a strong advantage that allowed Microsoft to move faster and smarter than many competitors. And here is a question you need to face honestly. Where is your energy going right now? Are you focused on one clear direction, or are you divided between many things that do not move your life forward? Because divided energy creates weak results, but focused energy creates momentum, and momentum is powerful. Once you build it, it starts to carry you forward. But building momentum requires consistency, patience, and the ability to stay committed even when progress feels slow. And as Microsoft continued to expand, the pressure did not decrease. It increased. Expectations were higher. Decisions were more important. And the consequences of mistakes became bigger. And this is another reality you must accept. Success does not remove problems. It changes the level of problems you face. And if you are not ready to grow with your challenges, you will be overwhelmed by them. But Bill Gates kept pushing, kept learning, and kept adapting. And this constant pressure, this constant demand for excellence, would eventually lead him to a level of success that most people can only imagine. But that level of success also came with a cost that many people do not see when they look at the final result. And that is where the story takes a deeper turn. From the outside, success looks beautiful. It looks clean, powerful, and inspiring. And when people hear the name Bill Gates, they often think about money, influence, and the title of one of the richest men in the world. But what most people do not see is the weight that comes with that level of success. Because every result has a price. Every achievement demands something in return. And as Microsoft grew into a global force, the pressure on Bill Gates did not disappear. It multiplied. His decisions affected not just his own life, but thousands of employees, partners, and an entire industry that was evolving quickly. And this kind of responsibility is not light. It requires constant attention, constant thinking, and constant energy. And while many people dream about reaching the top, very few are prepared for what happens when they get there. Because success does not remove stress. It transforms it into something bigger, something more complex, and something that follows you every day. And here is something you need to understand deeply. If you are not building strength now, if you are not developing discipline, emotional control, and mental resilience, you will not be able to handle bigger opportunities, even if they arrive. Because growth without preparation leads to collapse. And Bill Gates had to deal with criticism, competition, and intense public attention. People were watching his moves, analyzing his decisions, and sometimes attacking his methods. And this is another part of success that many people ignore. When you grow, you become visible. And visibility brings judgment. Not everyone will support you. Not everyone will understand your choices. And if you depend on approval, you will stop moving forward. Because fear of judgment will control your actions. And let me ask you something directly. How much of your life is controlled by what others think about you? How many decisions have you avoided because you were afraid of criticism? Because if you cannot act without approval, you will stay small, you will stay safe, and you will stay stuck. And Bill Gates continued to move forward, not because it was easy, but because he was committed to his mission. But even with all the success, all the money, and all the influence, there was a moment where something inside him started to change. A realization that success alone was not enough. That achievement without meaning feels empty over time. And this is a point that many people reach after years of chasing goals. They arrive at the destination and realize that something is missing. And this realization would lead Bill Gates to make another important shift in his life. A shift that was not about building more, but about giving more. And that is where the story begins to move in a new direction. At a certain point in life, if you are paying attention, you start to feel a quiet question growing inside you. A question that no amount of money, success, or recognition can silence. And that question is simple but powerful. What is all of this for? And this is exactly the moment that Bill Gates began to experience after reaching levels of success that most people only imagine. Because after building Microsoft into one of the most powerful companies in the world, after proving his ability to win, to grow, and to dominate in a competitive space, he started to look at his life from a different perspective. And this shift did not happen because he failed. It happened because he succeeded. And sometimes success is the thing that opens your eyes the most. Because it removes excuses. It removes the idea that when I achieve this, then I will feel complete. And when you finally achieve it, and still feel that something is missing, you are forced to look deeper. And Bill Gates began to understand that impact is greater than income. That contribution is more powerful than accumulation. And that legacy is not built by what you keep, but by what you give. And this is where he made another decision. A decision that many people did not expect. He stepped away from the daily operations of Microsoft to focus more of his time and energy on the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And this decision was not about escaping work. It was about choosing a different kind of work. A work that aimed to solve real human problems, like health, education, and poverty. And here is something I want you to reflect on. Success gives you options, but your character decides how you use those options. And if you are not thinking about purpose, if you are not thinking about contribution, you may reach a high level and still feel empty. Because achievement without meaning does not satisfy for long. And now, let me ask you something very honestly. If you had everything you say you want today, money, freedom, recognition, what would you do next? Would you just consume more, relax more, and stay comfortable? Or would you look for a way to create impact, to improve something, to leave a mark that goes beyond your own life? Because this question reveals a lot about your direction, and Bill Gates chose to expand his focus, to move from building products to improving lives. And this shift required a different kind of thinking, a different kind of discipline, and a deeper level of responsibility. Because solving global problems is not simple. It is complex, it is slow, and it requires patience. But once again, he committed, he focused, and he applied the same intensity that built his success into creating impact. And this new phase of his life carries a powerful lesson. A lesson about responsibility, about growth, and about what it really means to use your time in a meaningful way. And this is where the story begins to reflect directly back to you. At this point, you might be thinking that the story of Bill Gates is very far from your reality, that his level of success, his resources, and his opportunities are different from yours. And in some ways, that is true. But if you stay on that idea, you will miss the most important lesson, because this story is not about copying his life. It is about understanding the principles that shaped his decisions, and those principles are available to you right now, exactly where you are, with what you have. Because when you look at his journey, you start to see a pattern of responsibility, focus, and action. And these are not special talents. They are choices, repeated daily, consistently, even when it is difficult, even when it is uncomfortable. And this is where you need to be honest with yourself. Because it is easy to admire success. It is easy to watch stories like this and feel inspired for a few minutes. But inspiration without action is useless. It disappears quickly, and your life stays the same. So let me ask you something very directly. What are you doing differently after hearing this story? What action are you going to take today? Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Because change only happens when behavior changes, not when emotions change. And many people are waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel confident, waiting to feel motivated. But those feelings are not reliable. They come and go. They are unstable. And if your actions depend on them, your progress will always be inconsistent. And Bill Gates did not build his life based on feelings. He built it based on decisions. Clear decisions about how to use his time, where to focus his energy, and what to prioritize every single day. And that is something you can do too. You may not have the same scale, you may not have the same opportunities, but you have control over your time, your habits, and your focus. And that is where everything begins. And here is another truth you need to accept. Nobody is coming to save you. Nobody is coming to organize your life. Nobody is coming to force you to become better. This responsibility is yours, completely yours. And that may sound heavy, but it is also powerful, because it means you are not limited by others. You are guided by your own actions. And if you decide to change your habits, to improve your focus, and to take consistent action, your life will change. Slowly at first, but then more and more. And as you start to see results, your confidence will grow, your vision will become clearer, and your standards will rise. And this is how transformation happens. Not in one big moment, but in many small moments, repeated over time. And now, as we approach the final part of this story, there is one last mirror waiting for you. A moment where everything you heard will come back to you in a very simple but powerful question. A question that only you can answer. Now we arrive at the moment where there is no more story to hide behind. No more examples to observe from a distance. Because everything comes back to you, your life, your time, your choices. And the question that started this journey is still here. Maybe even stronger now. What are you doing with your time while the clock keeps moving forward without asking for your permission? Because the story of Bill Gates was never just about a man building Microsoft or becoming successful. It was about decisions. It was about focus. It was about using time with intention. And now you have seen the pattern. You have seen how curiosity became obsession, how obsession became skill, how skill became opportunity, and how opportunity became impact. And the only real question that remains is simple. Are you going to apply this, or are you going to forget it? Because most people listen, feel something for a moment, and then go back to the same habits, the same distractions, the same excuses, and that is why their lives do not change. Not because they lack information, but because they lack action. And I am not here to entertain you. I am here to challenge you, to push you to look at your reality without excuses. Because you already know what you need to do. You already know where you are wasting time. You already know which habits are holding you back. But knowing is not enough. You must act. And you must act now. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. Because delay is the most comfortable way to fail. It feels safe. It feels easy. But it slowly steals your future without making noise. And if you continue to wait, you will look back one day and realize that nothing changed, that the time passed, that the opportunities moved on, and that you stayed in the same place. And that realization is painful, much more painful than the discomfort of taking action today. So let me ask you one last time, what are you going to do after this? What decision are you going to make? What action are you going to take? Because your life is not built by what you think. It is built by what you do repeatedly, day after day. And if you want a different life, you must become a different person through your actions, your discipline, and your focus. And there is no shortcut. There is no secret. There is only work. Consistent, focused, and intentional work. And the good news is that you can start right now with what you have, where you are, without waiting for anything else. So stop looking outside. Stop waiting for perfect conditions and start moving. Start building. Start changing. Because the world is not waiting for you. The clock is not slowing down, and your potential will remain just potential if you do not act. And the truth is simple, hard, and real. The life you want is on the other side of the actions you are avoiding. So, step forward, take responsibility, and prove to yourself that you are capable of more. Because you are, but only if you decide to act now. Not tomorrow, not later. Now. The world is waiting for you. Do not make it wait any longer. Stay strong.